I'm assigning you a personal essay, not about physics, but about you and what kind of person you want to be.
So, it's been a whole year since the best Spider-Man movie ever made has hit the theaters, and this movie is a masterpiece. Honestly, people have, without a doubt taken note of that. From the animation to the soundtrack to the acting to the narrative, there have been numerous video essays and think pieces all writing about this film's cultural and societal impact and meaning. So, what's there really left to say?
Okay, let's do this one last time, yeah?
Well, a whole lot actually. Like a lot of video essays before me, I will say this movie is dripping in nuance, that there's no way one video could ever cover the entire movie. And so honestly, that only means that there's more to talk about, and more to talk about specifically with the movie's main message, that anyone can wear the mask. That anyone's lens and viewpoint on this movie is valid and valuable. So, I thought I would take a shot at this movie that has captivated me for a whole year now. But before then, a while back, I wrote about Captain America for One Marvelous Scene. I did a breakdown of Captain America's thesis statement, the line that defines his heroism and purpose as a hero, and to this day it's my most viewed video that still pulls in views. And so naturally, I even got some requests to create a video for Miles Morales and Spider-Verse, which coincides with the scene that I don't see many people tie into the larger context of the movie. A scene that I believe underlines and emphasizes the true meaning of Spider-Man through the lens of Spider-Verse, but also Miles Morales specifically. Yes, we are talking about the line, "No expectations." You see, everything in this movie deals with expectations, and no, I don't mean this in the evergreen Holy Grail-like critique of this movie subverts your expectations. It does in some ways and it doesn't in other ways, which, one, subversion does not inherently make anything good. I could start screaming right now and subvert your expectations for a video essay, but that wouldn't be a good twist to this video. No, Spider-Verse instead plays with expectations placed upon their characters. It's thematic, it's cohesive, and weirdly, it's necessary to tackle when dealing with a character like Spider-Man.
This is pretty standard Spider-Man stakes, you get used to it.
Because whenever a Spider-Man movie comes out, there's always this wave of criticism from different subsections of the fanbase, whether it be Tom Holland, the new comic run, the new animated show, or even Spider-Maguire. All these criticisms seem to overlap into one shared line. This show or media or comic book doesn't understand what Spider-Man is.
I don't think the writers at the MCU, I don't think they understand him. I don't think they understand what Peter Parker represents.
Main problem with this entire series, it doesn't understand Spider-Man. It doesn't understand the stuff that makes Spider-Man work.
He thinks Peter Parker is his own worst enemy and incredibly self-destructive and toxic to the people around him. That's not Spider-Man.
Spider-Man Homecoming is not a great Spider-Man flick, let alone a good one.
I hear it all the time. Heck, I'm even guilty of using this phrase myself, which, in reality, this is just a shorthand for this interpretation doesn't match my image of the character. Or basically, it's almost like we all have our own expectations on what should comprise Spider-Man. Is it the genius angle? Is it the one-liners? Is it the costume? Is it the frugal life? Is it all of the above? No. Simply put, Stan Lee's quote at the end almost acts as another thesis for Spider-Man. That person who helps others simply because it should or must be done and because it is the right thing to do is indeed, without a doubt, a real superhero. That's it. Spider-Man doesn't really belong to any one group. Heck, we even refer to the concept as Spider People now as there are so many of them. But even if you go and read that first ever comic book, I assure you, Peter's not doing anything too heroic. He's a person, but he learns he could try his best to try to be the best person he could be, and that effort is what makes him a superhero. That's what it seems like Stan intended, and that's why another motif of the movie is anyone can wear the mask. It has nothing to do with his interests or his hobbies, but instead about his motivation. And now, that sounds really simple and something we probably already know. We all saw the movie, but a good message doesn't inherently make a good movie. And how does it achieve such a simple message without, subverting our expectations? Well, the beauty is in the conveyance and formation of that message, with specifically Miles Morales and his relationship to expectations.
We all make choices in life.
It doesn't feel like I have a choice.
You
right
don't.
From large dramatic conflict to small one-off jokes, we meet Miles when he is inundated by expectations. His dad expects him to be better than him and Aaron by going to prestigious school. His teachers expect him to put up with a rigorous workload. He's expected to say, "I love you" back. Everyone expects him to tie his shoes. His uncle expects him to have game. Both of his father figures expect him to understand their side of history. And from the stilted way he's animated to the way he's cut off when he speaks, the audience understands that this is all very overwhelming. And to make it all worse, he's destined to become Spider-Man. So for reasons he does and doesn't understand, Miles is extremely tired of all this pressure put upon him. So in his first personal and honest character beat, Miles goes down to the sewer and throws up his tag with his Uncle Aaron, and where we, the audience, get his line, "No expectations." The scene begins innocently enough with Uncle Aaron taking Miles down into the sewers to throw up his piece on the wall. And note, up to this point, all the adults in Miles' life have been leading him places. None of them pausing for him to get a word in with them or state his feelings, they only push their expectations on him. But here in the sewer with Uncle Aaron, Miles takes a step forward to look at the wall, and what does Uncle Aaron do but stop and let Miles work on his own expression.
Now you on your own, Miles.
Obviously, if you listen closely, you can hear him giving Miles little snippets of advice and guidance, but it's just that. It's advice, it's guidance, it's not a forceful demand or reprimand. Miles even goes against his advice, not only because he feels comfortable to do so, but also feels empowered to trust his own decision.
Now you cut that line with another color. You want drip? 'Cause if you do, that's cool, but if you don't, you gotta keep it moving.
That's intentional.
This is the first time in the film that Miles truly reacts to his own surroundings in an active manner, where he leads the scene and no one else.
Real Miles, coming out of hiding.
And in between his active animation, the film cuts between that and the spider crawling up his clothing, which not only just looks awesome, with the film contrasting all the vibrant colors of Miles' art against the spider itself, subtly debuting the powers that Miles will utilize. But it's more likely a nod to the fact that while Peter got bit on a science field trip exploring his passion, Miles is going to get bit in the world where he feels the most connected and empowered by. When the scene wraps up, Uncle Aaron helps Miles close up the final lines, at Miles' direction of course, with a small silhouette and the line, "No expectations," as this is what Miles truly yearns for. He is tired of all the expectations placed upon him by those around him. Like many children or anyone, he yearns for a world and space where he could truly express himself openly without the worry or judgment of anyone else.
Wow.
Is it too crazy?
No, man. Miles, I see exactly what you're doing there, man.
This is intentionally simple and understandable. To make it novel would be to miss the point. Miles is an ordinary kid with relatable desires. He becomes empowered by the very passion that sets him apart from those around him, both passions being his art and his uncle, which both of those things that cause him trouble in his daily life. But of course, sincerity lends itself to insecurity, which is why Miles asks Aaron if he understands his intention, and Aaron warmly replies he does. Of course, I don't want to downplay the style and craft going into the scene either. The way the music is in perfect sync with the cuts, the way each camera shift ebbs and flows so that it never feels jarring, the spray of color that covers the camera, the similar way Miles and Aaron both dress, and not to mention the beauty of the piece itself. The scene is so wonderfully put together in general that despite its strong narrative, it's deserving credit in every which way possible. But this scene encapsulates everything you need to know about Miles. Frankly, this scene needed to land because the graffiti artist is something that this movie created. It was not part of his original inception, but the addition of it only makes his interpretation of Miles stronger. For his desire for no expectations is the relatability that has caused a hero like Spider-Man to thrive. And to connect this passion for his art to the construction of his own suit and reflection of Spider-Man ideology as a whole is nothing if not brilliant.
I like your suit.
Thanks. I made it myself.
And of course, a good movie would stop there. But Spider-Verse is not just a good movie, it is amazing. Because while expectations does in fact need to be avoided, expectations is not something one can avoid. The movie understands that yes, a Spider-Person is at their core someone without expectations. But that does not mean the fans, the universe, and they themselves exist without them.
All right, let's do this one last time.
From the very beginning, we are shown through blonde Peter Parker, the ideal Spider-Man. What we all picture. He's funny, he's heroic, he's relatable, with great power, references to the comics, references to the memes. This is what we all expect from Spider-Man, our hero. Except he ends his beginning monologue with a line.
There's only one Spider-Man. And you're looking at him.
A line that we all know that's incorrect. So why is it there? Well, that's because this movie has already begun to play with your expectations, and not, just because he's blonde. You see, blonde Peter epitomizes everything people expect Spider-Man to be, but there's something off. Something doesn't feel right. It's because the lines he speaks regurgitate during his death scene, but they seem to contradict each other.
I always find a way to come back.
Can't you get up?
Yeah. Yeah, I always get up. The only thing standing between this city and oblivion is me. We gotta team up here. We don't have that much time.
But how could they? He gives Miles the advice every superhero gets. This is what's to be expected.
You need to hide your face. You don't tell anyone who you are. No one can know. He's got everyone in his pocket.
Like if it was my fault, you wouldn't understand.
Miles, we're probably the only ones who do understand.
The simple fact is it's just not true anymore. And so when this version of Peter dies, it's not just the passing of a hero, but the passing of a way of thinking about Spider-Man. This isn't just a subversion of your expectations, this is the creators crafting new guidelines, a new status quo for Spider People. In every way possible, the film demonstrates the folly of Blonde Peter's advice. Miles trying to jump across the building like Peter results in him destroying the override key. Miles trying to preach with great power. Miles finding salvation in his community rather than hiding from it. It's not to say that Blonde Peter's way of thinking was wrong, but more archaic and misguided as he never got the pleasure of realizing he wasn't alone. This is shown similarly with Peter B. Parker. I have not been the first to say this, so I'll hurry through it. Peter B. Parker is the fate of Peter Parker's way of thinking. Trying to do it all himself results in him ending up bitter, alone, and as the movie would say, tired. The only difference between them is time. Peter B. Parker, even being the hero from our universe, lets us know that this is the Spider-Man we know. This is the fate of this dated view of Spider People. Miles meeting Peter B. Parker and the following lessons really get at this dynamic. First off, the advice Peter gives him is at first glance dismissive and funny.
Yeah, I got plenty. Disinfect the mask. You're gonna want to use baby powder in the soup, heavy on the joints. You don't want any chafing, right?
However, upon closer inspection, he's giving Miles rather practical and grounded advice. No lofty abstract lessons about heroism, but pragmatic guidance so Miles doesn't destroy his own body, which at this point is the only thing Miles has managed to accomplish. Miles at first begs Peter to teach him to swing, but quickly realizes that the experience is too overwhelming for him, expectations thrown back in his face.
You gotta swing or they'll catch you! This is what you wanted!
Miles complains about him being stuck with the janky hobo Spider-Man despite the audience knowing that this is one of the most comic accurate Spider-Man interpretations we've seen, even him not expecting the presence of other Spider People while Peter shrugs it off. It's almost like Miles himself is a kid who grew up surrounded by the same Spider-Man media we've been and has glorified him to the point of unrecognition. He keeps bringing up the promise he made to Blonde Peter, to the Spider-Man he knows, the perfect Spider-Man, everything he aspires to be. However, he's only failing to meet those expectations, which reckons with the specific insecurity and flaw of his character, but also his role in the narrative. He continues to fail the more expectations that are placed upon him, even by his fellow Spider People. All of them bombard him with questions that only pertain to their own specific skill set, all the things that make them unique which he could never hope to mirror or match.
Can you fight them all off at once?
Can you rewire a mainframe while being shot at?
Can you swing and flip with the grace of a trained dancer?
Can you close off your feelings?
Can you float through the air when you smell a delicious pie?
What? Yet his desire to live up to them only weakens his resolve. He has not learned what makes him his own Spider-Person, which finally explodes when Uncle Aaron is killed by Kingpin, and Uncle being shot, the death in the family. This is the thing everyone expects to happen to Spider-Man, and this destroys him. When he gets back to his dorm, he takes his art that literally says expectations and throws it out the window. This is what I mean when I say these story beats aren't just subversion. These beats of a Spider-Man story are what we expect. These beats are definitively Spider-Man, but they are also completely their own thing. They mold and shift to Miles' story and his narrative that allow for an almost universally applicable hero's journey, yet still flavored and creative enough to fill a holistically unique adventure. I could spend a whole video listing all of the little and large way these characters and plot formulate into this playful idea of expectations, but I hope my point is starting to get across. The writers wanted to celebrate Spider-Man, so they broke it down to the core, and crafted 6 characters that seamlessly fold into it, to the point of saying that if you don't think Penny or Gwen or Miles is worthy of being a Spider-Person, the problem is with your limited expectations of this concept. That is why when Peter tries to heroically sacrifice himself, Miles doesn't let him, because Peter is not the sole hero anymore. The reason why Miles' dad's speech to him is the turning point is because his dad alleviates him of the expectations placed upon him and reminds him that these pressures exist to inspire him, but if they become a hindrance or insecurity, then disregard them. This is Miles' story. These are Miles' gifts. Both the zap and invisibility, the powers that make him unique, are the things that free him from the webs that binded him. His realization of his own potential and resolve to craft his own idea is what empowers him. He has taken his leap of faith. He has abandoned expectations. And it almost sounds like it shouldn't make sense. No expectations. But it is within this oxymoronic phrase of words, the seemingly contradictory meaning of all the expectations placed upon you, confounded against the sheer lack of expectations about who you are, that culminates into this thesis. That duality, those layers, and that meaning is what created the greatest superhero in all of our hearts. That is why anyone can wear the mask. And that's why we are all Spider-Man.
So I'm Spider-Man. I'm not the only one. Not by a long shot.
But for now, that's all I got. Wash your hands, and thank you for watching and showing this to your friends, and I'll see you next time.